I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
The document had already been prepared. Princess Anne had approved the recommendation, the financial officers were waiting, and Queen Camilla was only one signature away from gaining unprecedented authority over the royal household's private spending. Then William entered the room. He read the final page, placed it flat on the table, and refused to let the transfer proceed. What followed was not a disagreement over money. It was a battle over who would control the monarchy from within. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William kept one hand on the paper as the room fell silent. The Royal Household Finance Committee, the group responsible for approving palace budgets, staff costs, resident spending, ceremonial expenses, and confidential family allowances, stood at the center of a decision that could reshape the next reign. Anne had proposed giving Camilla supervisory control over that body, believing one senior royal needed to bring order to rising costs and competing offices. Anne watched her nephew carefully. She had expected questions, but not a complete halt. The Princess Royal had presented the plan as an administrative solution, not a reward for the Queen Consort. Camilla waited in the adjoining room, believing the appointment was settled. She had been told the authorization required only routine approval. William felt the betrayal. The proposal had moved forward without his knowledge, even though affected budgets belonged to the household he and Catherine were preparing to lead. He spoke calmly, but his meaning cut through the silence. Efficiency, he said, could not justify placing so much influence in one person's hands. Anne's expression hardened. She heard more than caution in his refusal. She heard a challenge to her judgment. Yet William had found something she had not expected him to see. A clause allowed Camilla to review spending attached to the Wales household during an institutional transition, meaning the period when authority shifts from one reign to the next. That language could reach decisions involving Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis. Then the prince found the second problem. Charles had not written the approval note attached to the proposal. Another office had prepared the wording, raising the possibility that the king had never seen the reach of the transfer. William lifted the document and ordered that no copies leave the room. Anne warned him that Camilla had been promised the position. Outside, the Queen Consort heard the door open, waited for her name, and heard nothing. William had stopped the signature. Now he had to face two women who believed the matter was finished, and neither intended to retreat. To William, the money represented the future. To Anne, it represented order. To Camilla, it represented something far more personal, proof that she had finally been trusted with the machinery of royal life. None of them entered the conflict believing they were acting selfishly. That was what made the confrontation so dangerous. Each saw duty in a different form, and each believed the monarchy would become weaker if the others were allowed to prevail. William understood that financial oversight could shape far more than numbers. Succession, the transfer of the crown and its responsibilities from one monarch to the next, depended on preparation long before a throne changed hands. Whoever controlled household budgets could influence staff, residences, public priorities, and the lives of the next generation without ever making a public announcement. Anne saw the same system differently. The Princess Royal had spent years fighting waste, enforcing discipline, and protecting the household from confusion. She believed Camilla's closeness to Charles made her the most practical person to coordinate urgent spending while the king faced growing demands. To her, the proposal was not about power, it was about preventing disorder. Camilla received the news alone. A briefing folder, a prepared file, containing official notes and decisions, rested across her lap, as an aide explained that William had stopped the transfer. Her smile vanished before the message was finished. She closed the folder slowly, feeling another promised sign of acceptance disappear at the final moment. William carried a different pain into his private meeting with Catherine. He admitted that confronting Anne troubled him more than opposing Camilla. The prince respected his aunt's service, and he feared his action would look like an attack on her loyalty rather than a defense of clear boundaries. Catherine listened, then reminded him that silence could allow temporary authority to become permanent. Anne faced her own shock when she spoke privately with Edward. She told him through a documented account of the original discussion that the transfer had first been designed as a short-term measure during Charles's demanding schedule. Somewhere in the drafting process, however, the review date had disappeared. Edward read the page again and asked who had removed it. She had no answer. Catherine studied the remaining clauses and found something worse. Spending linked to George, Charlotte, and Louis could be placed under general household expenditure, meaning decisions affecting the young heirs might eventually reach Camilla's desk. Late that evening, Anne requested a private meeting with William. She excluded Camilla, removed her gloves before entering, and said she wanted the truth without lawyers, secretaries, or polished palace language. Their disagreement had begun with money. Now it was about to expose the moment that changed Anne's mind completely. The proposal had not begun in a committee room. It began 6 weeks earlier, after a ceremonial dinner at Windsor, ended with unpaid invoices, duplicated instructions, and 2 senior offices, accusing each other of concealing expenditure. Anne had watched the confusion unfold in real time. Camilla had stepped in and restored order before dawn. From that night onward, the princess became convinced that the queen consort needed formal authority. Yet one decision made during those frantic hours would later give William reason to distrust the entire arrangement. Anne arrived shortly after midnight and found exhausted officials arguing over stacks of invoices. The trouble had erupted after the Windsor Commonwealth dinner, a formal gathering celebrating links between Britain and other Commonwealth nations. The household treasurer, the senior officer responsible for supervising royal income and spending, had discovered that 3 departments had approved overlapping payments for transport, security accommodation, and private hospitality. Anne demanded to know who held final authority. No one answered clearly. One officer blamed the king's household, another pointed toward ceremonial staff, and a third insisted the Wales office had changed the original instructions. The princess felt humiliated. This was not a minor accounting error. Confusion at that level could delay public duties, damage trusted suppliers, and expose private family spending to scrutiny. Camilla entered while tempers were still rising. She listened without interrupting, separated the duplicated charges, and reassigned each payment to the correct office. The queen consort stopped 2 senior employees from being dismissed before responsibility had been established. She then contacted the affected suppliers and remained until every account had been balanced. Anne watched her closely. Where others had panicked, Camilla had imposed order. The princess left Windsor convinced that the household needed one clear financial authority, and she believed the king's wife had proved she could handle it. William learned about the crisis days later, but one detail changed everything. A frozen payment had belonged to Catherine's early years program. The Princess of Wales had received no warning, leaving her team committed to an event without knowing whether the promised funds still existed. Catherine felt exposed, and the prince saw how quickly financial confusion could damage work tied directly to their future responsibilities. Camilla had issued an emergency instruction that night. Disputed Wales expenditure would temporarily pass through her private secretary, the senior aide who manages her official correspondence and decisions. The order was supposed to last until morning. Instead, it continued for weeks without William being told. Anne never saw the confidential note produced by Camilla's office afterward. The document called the arrangement a successful test of centralized royal financial direction. William carried that note into their private meeting. He placed it between them and waited. Anne read it once, then again. She finally understood why he had intervened. But understanding was not surrender. Before the night ended, aunt and nephew would confront each other over trust, succession, and the true limits of Camilla's place. There were no aides in the room when Anne faced William. No private secretaries. No officials to soften the language or record a safer version of what was said. The document lay between them like an accusation. She believed he had humiliated her and destabilized a necessary reform. He believed she had placed the future monarchy inside Camilla's reach. For several minutes, neither sat down. Then the princess pointed to the blocked authorization and demanded that he defend his decision. Anne began with the disorder no one could deny. Household finances had become fragmented, approvals were arriving late, and rival offices were issuing conflicting instructions. The royal household, the network of staff and departments supporting the monarch and senior royals, could not function if every payment became another private battle. She said, exhausted employees needed one clear authority, not 5 competing voices. William accepted the failure but rejected her answer. The prince said financial clarity required written limits, regular reviews, and transparent responsibility. It could not depend on handing broad discretion to one royal, especially when that authority might reach the next reign. Camilla's interests as Charles's wife, he argued, would not always match Catherine's responsibilities or the needs of the Wales children. Anne struck the document with the back of her fingers. "You had no right to stop me without speaking to me first." William did not raise his voice. He told her she had given him no chance because she had never told him the transfer existed. The future king had discovered it only when the authorization was almost ready for signature. To him, that silence mattered as much as the power itself. Anne heard suspicion beneath every word. She accused her nephew of allowing old family wounds to shape institutional judgment. The charge landed hard. William flinched, then steadied himself. Protecting Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis from undefined outside authority was not resentment, he said. It was responsibility. William then produced the continuation order. The document, a written instruction keeping an earlier decision active, had allowed Wales-related spending to continue passing through Camilla's office long after the Windsor emergency ended. Anne read it once. Then she read it again. Anne's anger changed. She admitted she had approved temporary coordination for one night, not an indefinite arrangement lasting weeks. The princess set the page down more carefully than before and asked who had extended it. William answered that this was exactly what he intended to discover. A sharp knock ended the confrontation. Charles had requested both of them immediately. The king had now seen the complete proposal, including the missing review date and the clause reaching the Wales household. Anne moved toward the door, but left the disputed document beside William. Her certainty had cracked. Now the real decision belonged to Charles, and he would have to choose between his son's warning, his sister's judgment, and Camilla's expectation. Charles read the proposal without speaking. Anne stood near the fireplace, rigid with frustration. William waited across from her, determined not to retreat. Camilla had not been summoned, but her absence dominated the room. The king understood what approval would mean to his wife. Trust, status, permanence. He also understood what it would signal to his heir, that the future household could be financially shaped before the future king inherited it. Every possible decision carried the risk of betrayal. Charles remained the only person who could authorize the transfer. The constitutional center of the arrangement, meaning the royal authority whose approval made the change valid, rested with him. Yet the king had originally received only a short summary describing the proposal as routine financial coordination. Nothing in that summary had warned him that the final document reached so much further. The full version changed everything. It granted control over discretionary household funds, meaning money used for flexible internal spending, and influence over residence maintenance, confidential reports, and costs linked to succession preparations. Those powers could shape staffing, family planning, and the next reign long before any public change occurred. Charles removed his glasses and placed them beside the file. Then he looked at Anne and asked why she had supported language capable of reaching William's household. Anne did not defend the wording. The princess said she had never approved it. Her answer wounded him more than an argument would have, because it meant the proposal had changed after passing through hands he had trusted. The king looked down again, now reading every line as if it carried a hidden threat. William chose his words carefully. He told his father he was not demanding Camilla's exclusion from royal finances. The prince accepted that she needed authority over her own office and over responsibilities connected to Charles. What he would not accept was undefined power crossing into Catherine's work or the future of their children. Charles heard respect in the explanation. He also heard distrust. That mixture made the moment harder, because his son was not attacking Camilla openly. He was drawing a boundary around her. Edward entered carrying the original committee notes. The documented record showed that Anne's plan had included a 12-month review, mandatory joint reporting, and a clear exemption for the Wales household. All three protections had vanished from the final draft. Edward traced the changes to a senior official, trying to build a stronger central office around Camilla. The Queen Consort had not written the additions, but she had read the expanded document and had not challenged the powers it offered. Charles closed the file. He refused to sign the transfer and ordered an immediate review. Then he turned to William and gave one final instruction. He would meet Camilla directly. The authorization was suspended. The damage was not. And the Queen Consort was about to learn that the position she had already accepted in her heart would never become hers. Camilla had prepared for a ceremonial announcement, not a rejection. A new red folder had been placed on her desk. Her private secretary had already cleared time for weekly financial briefings. Then Charles entered alone and closed the door. She knew before he spoke. The king did not sit beside her, and the untouched folder suddenly looked less like an instrument of authority than evidence of a future that had vanished. When he finally explained William's objection, her disappointment hardened into something colder. Charles told her the transfer had been cancelled in its current form. A temporary council, a small group created to share decisions, until permanent rules were approved, would manage household expenditure, while new safeguards were written. No single royal would receive unchecked authority. The king spoke carefully, but every careful word made the rejection feel more final. Camilla asked whether Anne had withdrawn her support or whether William had simply overruled everyone. She wanted to know where the betrayal had begun. Charles answered that the final document had been materially different from the proposal his sister intended to make. The powers had widened, the protections had disappeared. His wife listened without interrupting. Camilla opened the red folder and removed the prepared briefing schedule. She tore the page once across the middle and placed both pieces beside Charles. The queen consort did not raise her voice. That restraint made her anger sharper. She told the king that she had spent years carrying responsibility, while others decided how much authority she could be trusted to hold. Charles tried to reassure her that this was about boundaries, not rejection. Camilla heard something else. She heard another line separating her place as his wife from her place inside the monarchy. Camilla then admitted what she had not told anyone. She had noticed that the Wales exemption, the clause protecting William's household from outside control, was missing from the final document. She assumed Charles had approved the change. Fearing that questions would make her appear weak or unprepared, she had remained silent. Anne arrived later and apologized for allowing the recommendation to advance without checking every clause. The princess accepted responsibility, but Camilla asked the question neither of them could avoid. Would you have stopped it if William had said nothing? Anne hesitated. That silence answered more than words could. William arrived that evening under Charles's instruction. Camilla dismissed every aide and waited alone. When the prince entered, she pointed to the chair opposite her. You have protected your future, she said. Now tell me what place you believe I have in it. For the first time, no official stood between them. One honest admission would now decide whether this conflict ended in compromise or became permanent. William expected anger. Camilla expected accusation. Instead, the private meeting began with a silence neither of them knew how to break. There were no documents on the table, and no officials waiting outside to rescue them from discomfort. The prince saw a woman who believed every withheld privilege proved she would never be fully accepted. The queen consort saw an heir who feared that every blurred boundary might one day threaten Catherine and their children. For once, neither could hide behind duty. William spoke first. He said his objection had never been to Camilla reviewing expenditure connected to her own office, or helping Charles manage the demands surrounding the crown. The real danger was a structure allowing one household to exercise undefined financial influence over another. Household authority, the power to approve spending and shape internal priorities, had to stop where another royal family unit began. Camilla listened without interrupting. She answered that royal responsibilities were often given without precise limits, because the institution depended on trust, habit, and judgment. The queen consort had believed the transfer would reduce confusion and support the king. She had not seen herself building a rival center of power. William then admitted why he had acted so abruptly. Catherine's program had already suffered during the Windsor accounting crisis. The Princess of Wales had learned that public commitments could be frozen by another office without warning. Watching his wife absorb that humiliation convinced him that informal arrangements were no longer safe. Camilla lowered her guard. She confessed that the appointment had represented far more than money. Anne's recommendation had felt like proof that someone inside the family trusted her judgment without first measuring her against Diana. The queen consort had wanted authority, but she had also wanted release from a history she could never fully escape. William did not dismiss that pain. Instead, he revealed that he had no intention of removing her from the revised system. The prince proposed a council where Camilla, Anne, the household treasurer, and a Wales representative would share oversight under written boundaries. The treasurer, the official responsible for supervising royal spending, would provide neutral reports to every member. Camilla surprised him by agreeing. She would accept limits, but only if the new arrangement clearly recognized her authority over Charles' household. She refused to become a ceremonial observer, whose name carried responsibility, while others held every real decision. William accepted the condition. Camilla then handed him the unsigned authorization and told him to destroy it himself. He folded the document instead. "No," the future king said, "this should be kept." He believed it should remain as a warning of what happened when private assumptions replaced honest conversation. Their compromise stayed secret that night. By morning, it would no longer matter. The cancelled transfer had escaped the palace, and a private family struggle was about to become a national argument. At 7 the next morning, the private struggle became public. A national newspaper appeared with a stark front page. William and Camilla facing in opposite directions beneath the words, "Prince blocks Queen's palace money roll." Broadcasters abandoned planned segments. Crowds gathering outside Buckingham Palace began arguing over whether the heir had protected the crown or publicly weakened his father's wife. Inside Windsor, William watched the coverage in silence, while Camilla realized that her humiliation now belonged to the entire country. The press moved quickly. Some commentators praised William for protecting succession planning, meaning the careful preparation of people, duties, and resources for the next reign. Others accused the prince of using institutional caution to reduce Camilla's standing. The argument was no longer about a document. It had become a public test of loyalty. Palace Communications issued a brief statement saying that household governance arrangements remained under review. Household governance, the system deciding who holds authority over staff, budgets, and internal responsibilities, sounded harmless enough. Yet the wording denied nothing. It did not explain why the transfer had been stopped, or who had altered the proposal. Speculation grew faster. Camilla saw the newspaper while eating breakfast with Charles. She turned the front page face down and continued pouring tea, but her hand struck the cup hard enough to make it tremble. The king reached toward her. She quietly asked him not to defend her with words that would only deepen the story. William faced a different pressure. A broadcaster questioned whether he had acted from genuine caution or unresolved resentment toward his father's wife. Catherine watched his jaw tighten. The princess reminded him that silence might protect palace dignity for an hour, but it would also allow strangers to define his motives for years. Anne finally ended the confusion. Through an authorized palace statement based on the original committee record, the princess confirmed that she had proposed the reform, that William had found unacceptable changes, and that the final document did not contain the safeguards she intended. Her admission shifted the argument instantly. Outside Buckingham Palace, phones began lighting up with the new statement. A small crowd broke into applause, praising the prince for stopping unchecked power. Minutes later, another group shouted support for Camilla, insisting she had been publicly humiliated for trying to help Charles. The monarchy now stood divided by two competing ideas of fairness. The palace responded with a new announcement. A Royal Household Finance Council, a shared body created to supervise royal spending through several representatives, would replace the abandoned transfer. Its powers would be limited, written, and reviewed. Yet one question remained. Camilla had been offered a place on the council. The institution had found its compromise, but the family's future still depended on whether she would accept a seat created from the ruins of the authority she once expected to command. 3 days after the block transfer, the family returned to the same room where the crisis began. The unsigned authorization was gone. In its place sat a shorter document establishing shared financial oversight, protected household boundaries, and direct reporting to Charles and his heir. Camilla arrived last. William stood as she entered. Anne watched them both, knowing her proposal had triggered the most painful royal dispute in years. The final question was no longer who had won. It was whether trust could survive correction. Camilla opened the revised charter and read without speaking. The Royal Household Finance Council, a shared body created to supervise spending through several representatives, now gave her clear authority over expenditure connected to Charles's household. Yet it also protected the Wales budget, succession planning, and the personal allowances of William's children from outside control. Anne retained a supervisory role focused on efficiency and accountability. The princess accepted that reform had been necessary because delayed approvals and rival offices had already damaged confidence. But she also understood that no solution could depend on one person holding undefined power. Shared authority, written limits, and automatic review would now replace private assumptions. Camilla reached the signature page and looked toward William. She told him that being restrained publicly had hurt more than she expected. Still, the Queen Consort admitted that honest trust mattered more than receiving authority nobody had properly defined. William answered without hiding behind ceremony. The prince apologized for confronting Anne before speaking with her, and for allowing Camilla to learn of his intervention through others. He did not apologize for blocking the transfer. That distinction was painful, but it was truthful, and she accepted it. Anne then disclosed through the documented findings of the internal review that she had personally removed the official, who expanded the original proposal, without transparent approval. The princess refused to let a courtier carry the blame alone. She admitted that failing to inspect the final language had been her mistake. Charles signed first. Camilla followed, then Anne, and finally William. The order carried deliberate meaning. The present crown, the king's partner, the guardian of discipline, and the heir responsible for the future. William's intervention had not destroyed Camilla's role. It had defined it. Anne's mistake had not erased her service. It had proved that loyalty without scrutiny could become dangerous. Camilla did not gain control over the entire household, but she gained recognized authority within boundaries everyone could understand. The final verdict was clear. Anne learned that efficiency could not replace consent. Camilla learned that acceptance could not be secured through accumulated power. William learned that protecting the future required firmness and direct conversation. The meeting ended without celebration or victory. 4 signatures remained beneath rules strong enough to outlast them, proving that the crown was safest when power was shared, boundaries were respected, and duty mattered more than pride. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.